everyone, and welcome to God's Plan, Your Part, a podcast where our goal is to read the entire Bible in a year, seeking to understand God's plan of redemption while discovering daily and practically your part in it.
So this may be the episode where we are able to pick from a multitude of different topics that Jesus taught on in Matthew chapters 5 through 7 today. There are so many things packed into these 3 chapters. It's quite ridiculous. All of them super rich with truly just good ways to live that honor God. These are technically, some of this is called the Beatitudes, but more broadly is the Sermon on the Mount in chapter 5. And it continues on with just more right living with God as we progress throughout the rest of the reading today. So, Ryan, anything stick out to you? I mean, there were tons of things. Because I literally counted, it's 21 different subtopics within this reading.
This format seems kind of silly for Matthew 5 to 7, just
for
because
real.
there are so many things that stick out. This is the Sermon on the Mount. So this Matthew chapter 5 to the end of around the end of chapter 7 is one sermon from Jesus.
Dang, can you imagine?
It's one setting. This is recorded much longer after it was delivered.
Yeah.
So it's very likely that this was a much longer sermon with a lot more things in it. But we actually read over, if you're tracking with us day to day, we actually read over part of this same message yesterday in Luke, I believe. And so this sermon had a lasting impact on Jesus' disciples because it was so different from what they were used to hearing. And you can see popularly lately, this is kind of referred to as an upside down kingdom kind of situation where Jesus is encouraging his disciples to do almost everything the opposite way that it has been encouraged to be done. And so it's a very compelling message. I think actually the wise man built his house upon the rock. That whole idea is based on if you do what Jesus says to do in the Sermon on the Mount, you will be like a wise man who built his house on the rock and it can withstand the storms.
Okay, so it feels like there's this common thread that goes throughout these chapters where it's to live a humble life that reflects the Lord and trust that he is going to do what he says he's going to do. Because throughout this, it's you need to make sure that you are not living a life that is full of anger. You are not living a life that is full of lust. You need to love the people that are cruel to you, that are evil to you. Give to others. Don't be storing things up for yourselves. Don't be seen by the masses just so that you feel better about yourself. The Lord will see your faithfulness to him and he will reward you for it. Judging other people, when that's the same idea we were talking about yesterday, judging other people when you still have lingering sin in your own life. God just talks about over and over again to live this humble and honest life and trust that God will do what he's going to do in your own life. That's kind of like that building your house on the rock. But yeah, that idea of humility just seems to just pop out over and over to me.
Yeah, it's humility, it's forgiveness, it's generosity.
Yeah.
It's a meekness, a quietness. I think one of the mainline things I want to point out is Matthew chapter 5, verse 17. Do not think, this is Jesus speaking, do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets. I have not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them. For truly I say to you, until heaven and earth pass away, not an iota, not a dot, will pass from the law until all is accomplished. This is why this is important. A common theme in, popular Christianity or something today is a lot of times you'll hear speakers accidentally, I think, set up this idea that God is this crusty old man that's really judgmental and mean. And Jesus is this new way that is wonderful and forgiving and loving and gracious.
Accepting.
And it's why does God feel like an angry old man? And why does Jesus feel like this wonderful new thing? And why do people separate the two?
Because they're not separate. They're the same.
It's very common that people will say, well, Jesus ushered in a new way. We are under a new God. And it's no, Jesus actually says himself that he came to fulfill the law and the prophets, not to abolish them. So anytime you hear a speaker say, well, Jesus threw that all out and we don't have to live like that anymore, and that's not important, like you're being deceived, and that speaker does not know what they're talking about.
Well, I've heard it over and over again too. Like, I understand there's an actual physical like sacrifice that doesn't need to be made on my behalf anymore. Like, I don't have to go and present a sacrifice via some priest somewhere. However, every time you sin, it is as if you are crucifying Jesus over and over and over again, because he was the ultimate sacrifice. So that's that whole idea. It's still happening. And it all happened on the cross. Like, every sin you've ever committed and will commit was nailed to that cross. So like, it's not like this, oh, well, now there's like this coupon that I don't have to worry about anymore. You are still living in a life that is just like crucifying Jesus over and over again. So yes, there is still sacrifice being made. But we just don't see it in that same way, because it's not in like the right here in front of our face.
Well, Matthew 5:17 shows us that Jesus did not even see himself that way. Jesus did not see himself as showing up and like pushing back on what old man God decided and bringing some new, cooler thing. Jesus himself saw himself as like the continuation of what God had been doing up to that point. And hopefully, if you've been tracking with the podcast day in and day out, you're seeing that Jesus is the ultimate fulfillment of what has been building and leading and bringing us to this point. So Jesus says, I'm not here to abolish the law. Why would he have said that? I think he would have said that because people were assuming that is what he was up to. I also think he said that because he knew it would be useful for us today, that Jesus is not here to abolish the law and the prophets. He's here to fulfill them. Now, there are things that we do differently, but way, way, way too often, Christians, I almost want to say like baby Christians, want to see their faith as like, oh, I don't even have to worry about any of that Old Testament stuff. That is old. That's gone. We're not like that anymore. We're better. We're cooler. We're more forgiving. We're more gracious. And that's just really, really, really foolish, because even Jesus did not see his ministry that way. Jesus is the fulfillment of the law and the prophets. That should draw us closer to the Old Testament, not further away from it. It is something we should know and understand. It's something that reveals the heart and nature and character of God. It's not something that should be thrown out because we have a new, cooler, better thing. Even Jesus here in Matthew 5 supports the idea that, hey, slow your roll. You got to know the law and the prophets, because I'm actually here to fulfill what they talk about.
Well, I think even a good your part for today is that not only did Jesus come to fulfill the law and the prophets, he goes beyond them and extends them even further still, which I think can like really be a good your part for us today, because not only are we no longer supposed to commit adultery, we are no longer to commit adultery in our own hearts. Like, the things that we think about, the things that we have ideas about, or we like dream up in our heads. We are accountable for those thoughts as well. So not only the things that we physically do, but the things that we actually like entertain in our minds, we are also judged based on those things as well. Like, so I think oftentimes we get this idea that Jesus just kind of like fluffs things up to make it better or seem not as bad. But what is so clear cut in the Old Testament, Jesus comes to fulfill that, but also extend like what the objective is. Like, hey, not only are you supposed to not sin in this way, even further, I want you to like not sin in this way too. So I think that is like, again, for your part today, is just really consider those things, those thoughts, those ideas that come into your mind, whether it's like how you would like to treat somebody because of how nasty they were to you, or, you know, even with lust, the things that cross our minds, things that we have thoughts or ideas about that nobody else knows, but God knows. Think about the sins that really trip you up, things that are like holding you back from living a life that Jesus is calling us to throughout chapters 5-7, and really think and ask God for help through those things, to clear your heart, to clear your mind, so that you are in a place where you can hold others accountable as well. Take that log out of your own eye, remove that sin, just get rid of it, so that you are not in a place where you can't even help other people because of how much you're being held back by your own sins, your own thoughts, those awful parts of us that we feel like no one sees, but God does. So that is our take on Matthew 5 through 7 today. We'll be back again tomorrow with some more of these Gospels.
Thanks so much for listening to God's Plan, Your Part. If anything stuck out to you, if you have any questions, or if you'd like to receive a Bible, you can email us at godsplanyourpart@gmail.com. Also, if you're enjoying the podcast, please consider supporting us through the link in our description. We love that you're on this journey with us, and we hope you have a great day. See you tomorrow.